How much AWS is too much AWS? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to MonkWeb. My name is Ayush. I'm an AWS Certified Solutions Architect. In this video, we're gonna see how much AWS do you actually need to pass the AWS Solutions Architect exam. Alright, so basically you do not need to know all the 200 plus services that AWS have to pass the exam. So knowing too much might actually hurt you. Okay, so I analyzed all the 20 practice tests that I gave and the real exam as well. Well, 92% of the questions are just from the 32 services and the rest are barely mentioned. Okay, so also when I started the studying, I made a list of the every AWS service, and the list had 200 like something 217 items, and I actually panicked because this is a lot, right? So then I looked at the actual exam and realized that some services appear in every practice test and others never. The exam isn't testing if you are an AWS encyclopedia. It's just testing that you can design good solutions with the most of the common services. Okay, so I have a lot, I prepared a lot for this video. I'll show you everything in detail. So let's just get started. Let me show you. Yeah. So this is a chart that I created. This consists of everything that will be in the exam, every concept, every service. Okay, so I have divided into tiers. Let's see tier 1. So tier 1 are the absolutely must master. It appears in the 40% of the questions, and trust me when I say I know these because I gave 20 plus practice tests before the actual exam. So I know everything. Okay, and I wrote down every wrong and the right answers I gave, every concepts, every cheat sheets, every one-liners. I have all that in my notebooks. Okay, and also if you want that my handwritten notes, just keep watching the video till the end. Okay, so the first and the most common services are the EC2 and S3. Okay, so I have described everything. If you want, I'll share you the link to this as well, okay, in the description, so you can just see these. Okay, so not just launching instances, you need to know the instance types and when a specific instance is used. Okay, the exam don't tell you or don't ask you that in this situation you will use an EC2 instance. Nope, it will ask you what type of EC2 instance will you use in this exact situation. This type of questions. Okay, I have included some 2-3 sample questions in the end. Okay, placement, groups, cluster, partition, when to use them. So these are very important. Storage options, instance, when to use instance stores, when to use EBS, when to use EFS as well. So that auto scaling, when to actually use auto scaling and when not to use, when to use load balancer and when not to use that. So that as well. Okay, next is S3. S3 is the most tested service. So know about when to transition, how to transition, and when to use standard storage class, when to use infrequent access, when to use Glacier, what is versioning, what are the lifecycle policies, cross-region replication, encryption points, access points, prefixes. These all are in under S3. VPC is this I actually wrote it down. I was thinking this is where the people fail. So master the subnets because these are complicated topics. So subnets, CIDR blocks, route tables, internet gateways, VPC endpoints, VPC peering, transit gateways, these kind of things. NAT gateways, NAT instances, security groups, NACLs, all of these. IAM, because security is huge. So understand roles versus users versus groups, when to use the roles, when to use the users, when groups are used, what is AWS organization, policy structures, cross-account access, multi-factor authentication, password policies. It can ask you questions like if it is a new user, what kind of things you will need to configure to a new account? So the answer is the multi-factor authentication, delete, and a strong password. So these kind of things, right? For the databases, RDS and DynamoDB. So when to use relational databases, when to use NoSQL irrational databases. Treat replicas versus multi-AZ, very famous thing. Backup and restore. What are the types of backups? For example, warm standby is there, pilot light is there. What are those? Performance optimization, how will you optimize this performance? When to use Aurora, when to use RDS, because they are both relational services. When to use either of them? All right, so these are tier 1. And when I say you need to know this, how much to know? So I have written that as well. Could teach to someone else. If someone asks you what is EC2 instance and what are the placement group, you can teach it to someone else. That's how much you need to know. No pricing implication, of course, very, very important. The exam tests you on pricing as well. Understanding the limitations, when a particular thing can have the limitations, so we can use another service, that upgraded service. Sorry, can compare to alternatives. So, for example, if you are comparing T2 micro with T3 large something, so when to use when? So this is comparison. So how deep is knowing? So you can know this much, so you are good to go for the tier 1. These appear in the 40% of the questions. Okay, now tier 2, these are rapid fires, 1 or 2 lines of questions. You can just see and tick mark the question, tick mark the solution, because you know the concept. These are almost like a one liners. And if you get confused here, just go to my Instagram at monkweb. I have covered more than 30 plus one liners there. All right, know well. So 20 to 30% of the questions are there. Okay. Lambda, serverless computing. A lot of time this asked. Lambda is very, very famous question. So it can be asked in serverless. How if we are designing a serverless solution and we have, like, let's say API gateway, how will you scale that? Name a serverless service that we will use in this case. So Lambda, very, very hugely used. CloudFront, it is a CDN, very very frequently used. Route 53 is there for the DNS and routing policies. EBS and EFS for the storage. S3 is also there. CloudWatch and CloudTrail, SNS and SQS for your decoupling, Elasticache for the caching. This you can also see Elasticache Redis versus Elasticache Memcached. And if also just a side integration, if you want these, there are a lot of versus kind of questions, like when to use EFS, when to use EBS, when to use Elasticache by Redis, when to use Memcached. A lot of comparisons are there, and I am creating a series on YouTube Shorts as well. I will start that in 1 or 2 days, in which I compare different services, or maybe I can upload that on the reels. So just follow along on everywhere. Okay, follow on Instagram as well and subscribe on YouTube as well, so you don't miss any videos, because these are absolutely gold. No one share these kind of services, because the reason is I am sharing and I have these resources because I don't just gave the exam and don't have any experience. So I wrote literally everything down on my notebook. Okay, so I have all that content, so I can post it. All right, and I will post it, of course, so for you to help. All right, and how deep is knowing for tier 2? Recognize the use cases instantly. So these are like 1-2 liner questions, so just you read the question and you just tick mark the answer. These are the direct questions. Okay, know basic configuration and understand how it integrates with other services. All right, so tier 3, let me shift it down. Tier 3 is, you only need to understand the basics of this. So direct connect and VPNs, AWS organizations, Kinesis data streams, Kinesis data firehose, step functions, simple SWF. So there's a very comparison between step function and the SWF, simple workflow service. That I will also cover that in the versus kind of series that I will create. ECS and Fargate, very, very famous. When to use which, because they both are for computing, just ECS. So I will not reveal many things here. I'm just telling you how much to study. Okay, these all I will cover in the separate things, separate reels or separate videos. All right, and how much to know for tier 3 services? So one sentence description, you just read the answer and you know that yes, this is what. For example, if you see like real-time streaming or something like that in the question, you instantly know it is Kinesis. So that primary use case, yes. So step function is basically for the workflow service. So if you get that the question is asking about a workflow service, yeah, you use that, you use the step function. So yeah. Or if a question is asking about serverless database that can scale indefinitely, you directly use Aurora. So that when not to use it, of course, when not to use Aurora, you know, because this cost money. So and security reasons as well. So when to use RDS and when to use Aurora, when not to use Aurora and when not to use RDS. So these kind of things. Don't be overwhelmed by this, because this is basically the simplest I can just explain you, because I have wrote everything and convert them into percentage, how much percent is what. So don't get overwhelmed by this. This is the basically the easiest you can get explained with by. Okay. All right. And therefore are just just be aware that these services exist. For example, if I say one two services, AppSync is there, SageMaker is there, AWS Light Sail is there. So these are just exist. So know the basic one word or one line thing that what they actually do. Okay. So these are all the tiers of services you need to know. Okay, let me catch a breath and let's move to next, the pattern recognition. Yeah, the exam loves these patterns. So it won't ask you directly that what will you use. It will give you a scenario and then ask you how to use that, how will you use this. So example, high availability, a structure that will require high availability pattern. So what will you use? You will use multi-AZ, auto-scaling, load balancer, multiple in the multiple region. This is the answer to this high availability. This is a very common thing, because we always design a solutions for high availability and cost optimization and the security. These are the main pillars. Cost optimization pattern. So for we use reserved instances because we can get up to 72% discount in these. We use S3 life cycle so that we can tier our storage class and save cost. If we don't use our objects too much, we can just shift them into a lower class that is cheaper. Okay. Auto scaling spot instances also save a lot of price, but when exactly to use a spot instance, that you need to know. Okay. Security patterns, of course, when are we using private subnets with security groups, how IAM roles are integrated, how does encryption works in databases, what is CloudTrail. So basically that is for logging everything. So CloudTrail is for the logs. All right, so these are just some basic patterns you will see in the exam, and 3 examples of questions that I have written. A company needs to store files that are accessed frequently for 30 days and then rarely after that. So this is the S3 classic S3 question. So if you are accessing frequently for 30 days, you will use a standard class, and then rarely you are using, so you will transition that into glacier class so that you can save on the cost. Okay, so this is a classic S3 question. Second one is an application need to scale automatically based on the CPU storage. So these are kind of questions. So see, it is not asking you directly. The first question didn't even said S3. But when you study all these services, you actually know the use cases of every service, right? Not every service, like 33, 32 service. Okay. So an application need to scale automatically. So you need to track that. So you use a auto scaling group, the target tracking policy. So you track every CPU percentage. For example, if the requirement is you need to scale when the 80% of the threshold passes, so you will use auto scaling groups for that. A database must survive an availability zone failure. If the whole zone is failed, what database will you use? How will you use a multi-AZ database? And also, if a whole region failed, how will you configure a multi-region AWS database? So these are pattern questions. All of the questions are like these. Some 5 to 10 questions or maybe less are just one liner that you can basically tick mark the answer. There is no real and broad scenario. They are just one liners. I have covered that in the Instagram reels. Okay. So yeah, this is everything actually you need to know. So bottom line, focus on 32 services deeply rather than 200 services. Okay. And also I studied and created the note. So if you want the note, just email me and you can just make the payment and I will tell you what are the steps. You can just take my notes directly. It contains everything, every notes, every service. You will not get a single question outside of that notes. So every service is listed there, and when to use what, this or that, situational based, scenario based, cheat sheets, one liners, everything is in my notes. So if you want that, just email me directly. Okay. Also, like this video if I cleared up some confusion, and subscribe for more exam strategies. And you have any questions, any question, okay, I will not judge you. Just write that down in the comment section and I will answer that. Okay. So just that's it for this video, guys, and I will see you in the next one, where we will see my whole journey, where how I started from absolutely zero to a solutions architect. So keep watching, subscribe the channel, and I'll see you. Peace out.